Kang Ji-hoon stood at the tall window of the conference room and looked out at the stars. Behind him, alien diplomats spoke in their careful, measured voices. They were discussing trade routes and technology sharing, but Ji-hoon already knew how this meeting would end. The same way every meeting ended for the past 3 years. "The human request is denied," said Commander Varix, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Varith, controlled most of the Galactic Collective's military forces. "Your people are not ready for transit gate technology." Ji-hoon turned around slowly. He had practiced this moment many times. Stay calm, use logic, show no emotion. That was what worked with these aliens. "Commander, humanity has been part of the collective for 30 years now," Ji-hoon said. "We have proven ourselves reliable partners. Our engineers are skilled. Our scientists contribute to research. Why do you still deny us access?" Another alien spoke up. This one looked like a walking collection of silver branches, its body thin and tall. "The Nexum were the great mathematicians and engineers of the galaxy. The answer is simple," it said in a voice like wind through metal. "Humans are too unstable, too emotional. You make decisions based on feelings rather than facts. This makes you dangerous." Ji-hoon felt frustration rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Showing anger would only prove their point. "We are learning your ways. We can be more logical. Can you?" Varix leaned forward. "Last month, a human transport captain ignored optimal flight paths to rescue a damaged civilian ship. The rescue attempt cost resources and time. It endangered his own crew. The ship he rescued was not even human. Tell me, Ambassador Ji-hoon, was this logical?" "He saved lives," Ji-hoon replied. "Exactly," Varix said, as if Ji-hoon had just proven his argument. He let emotion override logic. This is why humans cannot be trusted with critical technology. The meeting ended badly. Ji-hoon walked back to his quarters feeling defeated. 30 years since first contact, and humans were still treated like children in a galaxy of adults. Far from the political center, Lee Hana floated in the command deck of the research vessel Discovery. She loved this job. While diplomats like Ji-hoon fought for humanity's place in politics, she got to explore space and discover new things. "Captain, we're approaching the dead star system," said her co-pilot. "Any signs of life?" Hana asked. "None. The collective survey said this system was empty. Nothing of value." But Hana had learned to trust her instincts. Something about this system felt wrong. The collective did thorough surveys, but they only looked for things they expected to find. Humans were better at noticing the unexpected. "Do a deep scan anyway," she ordered. Her crew obeyed without question. They were used to Hana's hunches by now. The Nexum advisors on the ship complained that she wasted time on unnecessary checks. But Hana had found 3 important discoveries in the past year alone. Each time she had followed her gut feeling rather than the official reports. The scan results appeared on her screen. Hana's eyes went wide. "What is that?" she whispered. "Reading massive energy signatures underground on the 4th planet," her science officer reported. "Captain, this is impossible." The collective survey said that planet was geologically dead. Then the collective was wrong. Hana smiled. "Set course for the 4th planet. I want to see what's down there." On a military training station orbiting Mars, Park Taeyang watched his human Marines train alongside alien soldiers. The exercise was supposed to be simple. 2 teams, capture the objective, standard tactics. The alien team won easily. They always did. The Varith moved with perfect coordination. The Nexum calculated every possible outcome before making a move. Against such organized, logical opponents, the humans seemed chaotic and messy. But Taeyang noticed something strange. Yes, the aliens won the simulation, but they won the exact same way every time. Their tactics were perfect, which meant they were also predictable. "Run it again," Taeyang ordered. "But this time, human team, forget the training manual. Just do what feels right." His fellow officers looked at him like he was crazy. "Forget the manual? That was against every rule of military doctrine." "Sir, the advisors won't approve," one officer warned. "Then don't tell them," Taeyang said. "Just try it." The simulation ran again. This time, the human Marines didn't follow perfect formation. They split up in ways that made no tactical sense. One squad abandoned a strong position to help another squad that was in trouble, even though the manual said to hold position. The aliens started making mistakes. They had calculated the optimal human response, but the humans weren't doing the optimal thing. They were doing the human thing. The humans lost again, but it took longer this time. and Taeyang saw moments where the aliens looked confused, uncertain. That gave him an idea. In a small research lab on the collective's central station, Choi Yuna studied reports on alien psychology. Her job was to understand how different species thought, how they made decisions, and how humans could work better with them. What she was discovering troubled her. Every species in the collective had evolved similar traits. They valued logic over emotion. They made decisions based on what was best for their genetic group. They didn't form friendships outside their species. They saw feelings like love, hope, and compassion as weaknesses that their ancestors had bred out over millions of years. Humans were the only exception. Yuna pulled up a video from that morning. It showed a human engineer working with a Nexum on a repair project. When the Nexum made a mistake and damaged some equipment, the human patted its shoulder and said, "Don't worry. Everyone makes mistakes." The Nexum had stood frozen for several seconds, its translator struggling with the concept. In its culture, mistakes were failures to be documented and punished. Comfort and reassurance were unknown. "We're so different from them," Yuna muttered to herself. "They think we're weak because we care about each other." But maybe her thought was interrupted by an alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the station. An emergency broadcast filled every screen. "Attention all collective forces. Distress signal received from Colony Terminus 7. Colony under attack by unknown hostile force. All available military assets are ordered to respond immediately." Yuna's door slid open. A security officer stood there, breathing hard. "Dr. Choi, you're being assigned to the response fleet. Pack your research. We leave in 1 hour." Across the station, Ji-hoon received the same message. So did Taeyang at Mars. And far away near the Dead Star system, Hana's ship received new orders. "Stop research. Report to Terminus 7, maximum speed." As human forces gathered with alien ships, preparing for whatever danger awaited them, none of them knew that they were about to discover something important. Something that would change everything the collective believed about humans. They were about to learn that being emotional, caring, and illogical wasn't a weakness at all. It was the very thing that made humanity special. It was the hidden strength that would save not just humans, but the entire galaxy. But first, they had to survive what was waiting for them at Terminus 7. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Terminus 7, and what they saw made everyone fall silent. The colony was burning. Great towers of smoke rose from the surface into the thin atmosphere. Ships floated dead in orbit, their hulls torn open like paper. "By the ancestors," Commander Varix whispered from his command ship. Even the usually calm Varath sounded shaken. What could do this? Ji-hoon watched from the diplomatic vessel attached to the fleet. The colony had housed 50,000 beings from 6 different species. Now it looked like a graveyard. "All ships, battle formation," Varix ordered. "Prepare for enemy contact." The response came fast. Things emerged from behind the planet, but they weren't ships. They looked like dark clouds that moved with purpose. Thousands of small objects, each the size of a human fist, flying together like a school of fish. "Scanning the enemy," reported a Nexum science officer. "Energy signatures do not match any known species. Behavior suggests swarm intelligence." Searching historical databases, the dark clouds attacked. They moved faster than any ship, flowing around the collective fleet like water around rocks. Wherever they touched, metal melted and systems failed. "Return fire," Varix commanded. The alien warships opened up with their weapons. Bright beams of energy cut through space, hitting the swarms. Hundreds of the small objects exploded, but thousands more took their place. The clouds seemed endless. "They're adapting," a Varith tactical officer reported. "Our second volley was 30% less effective. Third volley 40% less effective. They're learning to defend against our weapons in real time." Taeyang listened from the human military transport. He had 50 Marines with him, not enough to matter in a battle this size. But something about the enemy's behavior caught his attention. "They're predicting our moves," he said quietly. His second-in-command, a woman named Kim Suji, who served as their medical officer, looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Watch. Every time we fire, they've already moved out of the way." "Not reacting, predicting. They know what we're going to do before we do it." "How is that possible?" "Because we're following doctrine," Taeyang said slowly. "We're doing everything by the book. And the book says there's one optimal response to every situation. They've figured out our tactics. On Hana's research ship, the engineer was trying to get more sensor data. The Nexum on her crew insisted it was pointless. The warships have superior sensors. We cannot provide useful information. Maybe not with standard sensors, Hana said, already pulling apart a console. But what if we try something different? Different how? Hana didn't answer directly. She was rewiring systems, connecting things that weren't supposed to be connected. The Nexum watched in horror as she bypassed safety protocols and merged 3 different sensor arrays into one. This is against regulations, the Nexum protested. The power surge could destroy the entire sensor suite. You're gambling with expensive equipment on an untested theory. Yeah, Hana grinned. I am. Want to help or just watch? The Nexum couldn't understand humans. They took such unnecessary risks. But curiosity, that universal trait, made it help anyway. When Hana activated her jury-rigged sensor, it worked. More than worked. It showed things the regular sensors missed. Deep inside the swarm, she detected organized patterns. A central intelligence coordinating the thousands of pieces. Got you, she whispered. Back on the command ship, things were getting worse. 3 collective vessels had been destroyed. The colony on the surface wasn't responding to hails. The swarm just kept growing. More clouds emerging from somewhere on the planet. Commander Varix, Ji-hoon called from his ship. We need to land forces, get people out of the colony. Negative, Varix replied. We must destroy the enemy first. A rescue operation would divide our forces and reduce combat effectiveness. There are 50,000 people down there. There were 50,000 people. Probability analysis suggests 97% casualties already. A rescue attempt would risk additional lives for minimal gain. Ji-hoon felt something hot and angry rise in his chest. This was the alien way, pure logic. Calculate the odds. Make the optimal choice. Never mind that there might be 3,000 beings still alive, still hoping for rescue. With respect, Commander, I disagree. Your disagreement is noted and irrelevant, Varix said. All ships maintain formation and... An explosion cut him off. One of the alien warships had taken critical damage. Its reactor went critical, and the ship tore itself apart in a flash of white light. The swarm pressed its advantage. It had learned how the collective ships moved, how they fought, how they thought. Every strategy Varix tried, the swarm countered perfectly. It was like fighting against an enemy that had already studied the textbook they were all using. All ships begin withdrawal, Varix ordered. We cannot win this engagement. We must retreat and request reinforcements. What about the colony? Ji-hoon demanded. Lost. We will return with a larger force. In 3 weeks, those people will be dead. They are likely already dead, Ambassador. I will not sacrifice more lives on an emotional response. That word. Emotional, like it was something dirty, something weak. Ji-hoon wanted to scream at the alien commander, but he knew it wouldn't help. Logic never won against more logic with these species. But then Taeyang's voice came over the command channel. Commander Varix requests permission to land human forces on the colony. Denied. It's a suicide mission. Not asking your permission, Commander, Taeyang said calmly. Informing you of our intention. Human vessels are breaking formation and heading to the surface. We're getting our people out, and anyone else we find. This violates fleet protocol. Yeah, it does, Taeyang agreed. You can file a complaint later. If we survive. Hana, you getting this? On her research ship, Hana was already changing course. Got it. I'm picking up life signs in the underground shelters. Sending coordinates now. How can your damaged sensors detect what our military sensors cannot? The Nexum science officer asked, confused. Hana just smiled. I bent a few rules. You should try it sometime. 3 human ships broke from the fleet formation. Taeyang's transport, Hana's research vessel, and 1 other supply ship. They dove toward the planet, the dark swarms chasing them. This is madness, Varix muttered, but something in his voice sounded different. Not angry, almost curious, Taeyang's ship hit the atmosphere hard. The swarm was right behind them, but then something strange happened. The swarm started to slow down, started to hesitate. They don't know what to do, Suji said, watching her tactical display. We're not following any logical pattern. We're doing something that makes no sense. That's because it doesn't make sense, Taeyang replied. There's no tactical advantage to this. We're risking everything for people we might not even be able to save. It's stupid and emotional and completely human. They landed near the main shelter entrance. The swarm was reforming, would be on them in minutes. Taeyang's Marines deployed quickly, along with Hana's crew and everyone who could help. Yuna was with them, her research skills suddenly very practical. She understood alien psychology, and could communicate with the frightened survivors from multiple species. The shelter doors were jammed. Hana got to work with whatever tools she could find, while the Marines set up a defensive perimeter. The swarm closed in. "We need more time," Hana shouted. "Don't have any," Taeyang shouted back, firing at the leading edge of the swarm. The dark clouds descended on them. This was it. This was where they would probably die. Trying to save people the collective had already written off as lost, but humans had always been bad at giving up, even when logic said they should. The swarm came at them like a wave of darkness. Taeyang's Marines fired everything they had, but the small objects just kept coming. They would all die here, but at least they would die trying. That was the human way. Then something unexpected happened. Energy beams cut through the swarm from above. Varix's warship had moved into position, firing down at the enemy. "What is he doing?" Hana asked, not stopping her work on the jammed door. "Probably thinks we're too stupid to live without supervision," Taeyang replied, but he was smiling. The Varath commander's voice crackled over their radios. "Human forces, this is still a terrible tactical decision. But since you're down there anyway, we might as well provide cover fire. Try not to die." The paperwork would be extensive. It wasn't a declaration of friendship. It wasn't even approval. But it was help, and that was enough. The shelter door finally groaned open. Inside, hundreds of faces looked up at them. Not just humans. Varath families. Nexum workers. Species that Taeyang didn't even recognize. All of them frightened. All of them grateful. "Everyone move now!" Suji shouted, helping an elderly Varath male who could barely walk. This should have been where training took over. Evacuate the able-bodied first. Leave those who would slow the group down. Maximize lives saved. That was the logical way. But a young human Marine named Seo Minho saw a Nexum child crying in the corner, too scared to move. The child's parents were probably dead. The child would slow them down. Taking it made no sense. Minho picked the child up anyway. "It's okay. I've got you." The Nexum child wrapped its thin silver arms around Minho's neck and held on tight. Minho ran with the others, refusing to leave the child behind. Even though it meant he couldn't use his weapon properly. Even though it put him at greater risk. A Varath soldier saw this and tilted his head in confusion. "Why does he burden himself? The child is not his family." "No," Yuna said, helping injured survivors to the ships. "But he cares anyway. That's what humans do." They got everyone loaded onto the 3 ships. It was too many people, way over safe capacity, but they crammed them in anyway. As the ships lifted off, the swarm tried to follow, but Varix's warship hammered them back. They made it to orbit. Against all odds, they had saved 473 people. It wasn't the thousands that were lost, but it was 473 lives that the collective had already given up on. On the flagship, Jihoon met with the other humans and Commander Varix. The alien commander looked at them for a long moment before speaking. "What you did was tactically unsound. You risked valuable military assets for a small number of survivors. By all logical analysis, you should have died down there." "But we didn't," Taeyang said quietly. "No, you didn't." Varix paused. "The swarm hesitated when you landed. For 3.7 seconds, its attack pattern became inefficient. We do not understand why." "I think I do," Yuna said. She had been reviewing data during the flight back. "Commander, the swarm operates on prediction. It learns patterns and counters them. That's why it beat all your tactical responses. But what Taeyang did? There was no pattern to predict. No logic to calculate. He just did what felt right. Emotional decision-making," Varix said, but he didn't sound dismissive this time. He sounded thoughtful. Meanwhile, Hana had been studying the sensor data she collected. "I found something. The swarm isn't just mindless. There are ruins on the planet. Ancient ruins. I think this thing has been down there for thousands of years and the colony woke it up." "Ruins?" Jihoon leaned forward. "What kind of ruins?" "A civilization. A big one. And I think they lost a war to this swarm. A long time ago." Yuna felt pieces clicking together in her mind. A war they lost because they were too logical. Too predictable. On the medical deck, Suji was treating the wounded. The human evacuees were hurt and scared, but they would recover. What surprised her was how the alien survivors behaved. The Varath kept to themselves, each one silent and alone. When she tried to treat them, they were polite but distant. They didn't want comfort. They just wanted to heal and get back to work. "Don't you have family here?" Suji asked one Varath soldier who had lost an arm. Someone to sit with you? My genetic family is on the homeworld, the soldier replied. The other Varath here are colleagues, not kin. Why would they visit me? Suji couldn't understand that. When a human got hurt, their friends came. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to. Because they cared. But she tried something. She placed a human survivor in the same room as a Varath survivor. The human, an older man, started talking to the Varath. Nothing important. Just small talk, asking how the Varath felt, sharing a story about his own injury years ago. The Varath looked confused at first. Why was this human wasting time talking? But slowly something changed. The Varath started talking back. Started sharing his own story. When Suji checked on them an hour later, both patients were resting more comfortably. Their vital signs had improved. The human's presence had somehow helped the Varath heal faster. Interesting, Suji muttered, making notes. Emotional support has measurable medical benefits, even across species. Down in the shelter where the rescued civilians waited, something else was happening. The species were naturally separating themselves. Varath in one corner, Nexum in another, each group staying with their own kind, except where the humans were. The human survivors were scattered throughout the shelter, talking to everyone. A human child was playing with the Nexum child that Minho had rescued. A human woman was sharing her food with a Varath family. Minho himself sat with the Nexum child, who still wouldn't leave his side. Other Nexum approached slowly, curious about this human who had risked his life for one of their young. Why did you save it? One Nexum adult asked. You are not its parent. You are not even its species. Minho looked surprised by the question. Because it needed help. Why else? But you gained nothing from the action. You endangered yourself for zero genetic benefit. I guess so, Minho shrugged. But I couldn't just leave a kid behind. It wouldn't be right. The Nexum struggled with this concept. In their society, you protected your own genetic offspring. That made sense. That ensured your DNA continued. But protecting an unrelated individual of another species entirely, the calculations didn't work. There was no logical reason. Yet the human had done it anyway. Back on the bridge, the fleet had regrouped. The swarm had pulled back to the planet as if waiting. More collective ships were arriving, and with them more firepower, but also more rigid tactical thinking. Varix called a strategy meeting. Human representatives were invited for the first time. Not because protocol demanded it, but because Varix was starting to think that humans might have something valuable to offer after all. The swarm is learning our tactics faster than we can adapt them, Varix explained. Every strategy we employ becomes less effective. At this rate, we cannot win. Then stop being predictable, Taeyang said. War is not about unpredictability. War is about optimal tactics and superior force. Except this enemy has evolved to beat optimal tactics, Yuna interjected. Commander, I've been studying the data. This swarm, I think it spent thousands of years fighting a highly logical civilization. It learned to predict and counter every logical response. That's why it's so effective against collective forces. But it hesitated against us, Taeyang added. Against humans who acted on instinct and emotion rather than calculation. Ji-hoon saw where this was going. You want humans to lead the next assault? I want humans to do what you do best, Varix said slowly. Make irrational decisions that somehow work out. Because logic is failing us and we need something else. It was the first time a collective commander had ever asked humans to be more emotional, not less. It was the first time the aliens had admitted that pure logic had limits. It was the first time they understood that humans might not be weak after all. There are still thousands of survivors in the underground shelters, Hana said, checking her sensors. We need to get them out before we can launch a full assault on the swarm. Then we go back down, Taeyang said simply. All human forces. We get every survivor we can find. That is not optimal, a Nexum officer protested. The risk is, we know the risk, Ji-hoon interrupted. But those are people down there. Real people with families and lives and hopes, and we're not leaving them behind. Varix looked at the humans for a long moment. Then he did something no Varath commander had done in recorded history. He changed his mind based on emotion rather than calculation. Very well. Human forces will lead the rescue operations. Collective ships will provide support. And may logic forgive us all for trying this insane plan. But as the humans prepared for another trip to the surface, They all felt something the collective species had forgotten. They felt hope. And hope, as any human knew, was often more powerful than logic. The second rescue wave went better than the first, not because they had better tactics, but because they had no tactics at all. Taeyang told his Marines to trust their instincts, go where it felt right, help who needed it most, stop following the manual and start following their hearts. The swarm still attacked, but it kept making mistakes. It would predict where soldiers should go according to doctrine, but humans would go somewhere else instead. It would calculate optimal firing patterns, but humans would shoot wild and miss and somehow still hit important targets. Minho led his squad to a collapsed building where his sensors said nothing lived. Logic said to skip it, but something made him stop. A feeling, a hunch. Check that building, he ordered. Sensors show no life signs, sir, his second replied. Check it anyway. They found 30 survivors huddled in a shielded basement that blocked sensors. If they had followed logic, those 30 people would have died. But Minho had followed something else, something the collective species couldn't understand. He had followed hope. On Hana's ship, she worked with the Nexum engineers to boost the sensor range. The Nexum insisted it was impossible with current power levels, but Hana just smiled and started rerouting systems again. This will overload the power grid, the Nexum warned. Probably, Hana agreed, not stopping. If it overloads, we could lose life support. Then we better work fast. The Nexum watched her work with growing fascination. She wasn't calculating odds or running simulations. She was just trying things, trusting her gut, making it up as she went along. It was the opposite of everything the Nexum were taught. And it worked. The sensors came online with 3 times their normal range. Impossible, the Nexum whispered. You keep using that word, Hana grinned. I don't think it means what you think it means. We're finding more survivors. Sending coordinates now. Down in the medical bay, Suji made another discovery. The rescued aliens were healing faster when humans were nearby. Not because of advanced medicine. Because of something simpler. Because humans talked to them. Comforted them. Cared about them. A Vareth soldier with severe injuries wasn't responding to treatment. His vital signs were dropping. The logical choice was to focus resources on patients with better survival odds. Suji sat next to him instead. She held his hand and talked to him. About nothing important. About her home. About the stars. About hope. The Vareth's eyes opened. Why do you waste time on me? I am not your kin. You're my patient, Suji said simply. And I care about my patients. All of them. That is not logical. No, Suji smiled. It's not. But it's human. The Varath lived. Against medical odds, he lived. And when he recovered enough to talk, he asked questions. About humans. About this strange thing called caring. About how they could feel so strongly for someone they just met. Yuna spent her time interviewing the rescued aliens. She needed to understand why humans were so different. Her research was finally coming together. Every species in the collective evolved to be logical, she explained to Ji-hoon. They saw emotions as weaknesses. Over millions of years, they bred out the ability to form strong emotional bonds outside family groups. It made them efficient. It made them predictable. It made them perfect for a society built on logic and calculation. But it made them vulnerable to this swarm, Ji-hoon realized. Exactly. The swarm evolved to fight logical opponents. It can predict any rational decision. But humans? Yuna's eyes lit up. We're still emotional. We still form bonds with strangers. We still care about people for no genetic reason. We're the only species in the galaxy that loves illogically. And that makes us unpredictable. More than that, it makes us adaptable. When we care about someone, we'll try anything to save them. We'll take risks. We'll innovate. We'll do the impossible because we have to. Because someone we care about needs us. As more survivors were brought up from the planet, something beautiful started to happen. The rigid separation between species began to break down. Human children played with alien children. Human adults shared food with alien families. The humans couldn't help it. They just naturally started caring about everyone around them. And slowly, cautiously, the aliens started caring back. Minho's Nexum child followed him everywhere now. Other Nexum started asking Minho questions. Not about tactics or logic, but about feelings. About why he risked his life for someone else's child. About this concept of friendship that humans had but Nexum didn't. I don't understand it, one Nexum admitted. But I observe that you are happier than us. You form connections that we do not. Is this what we lost when we chose pure logic? Minho didn't have a good answer. He just knew that caring about others felt right. And watching these logical aliens slowly learn to care back felt even better. Meanwhile, the swarm was preparing something big. Hana's sensors detected massive energy buildup under the planet's surface. Commander Varix, we have a problem, Hana reported. The swarm is gathering all its forces in one location. I think it's planning a final attack. Estimated force level? Varix asked. All of it, everything. It's going to throw everything at us in one massive wave. The fleet went to full alert. Every ship powered up weapons. Every soldier prepared for battle. The calculations showed that even with all collective forces combined, they would lose. The swarm was simply too large, too adapted to fighting logical tactics. Taeyang looked at the tactical display and made a decision that horrified the collective commanders. We split up. That violates every principle of military doctrine, a Varith officer protested. We concentrate our forces, not divide them. The swarm is expecting us to concentrate forces, Taeyang explained. Because that's the logical thing to do, so we do the illogical thing instead. You're gambling with thousands of lives on a hunch? Yes, Taeyang said calmly. That's exactly what I'm doing. Any humans have a problem with that? The human forces responded as one. No, sir. The aliens looked at each other in confusion. These humans were about to enter a battle where logic said they would lose, and they were happy about it. They were eager. They were ready. Because they weren't fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the people they had rescued. For the Varith families they had saved. For the Nexum children they had carried to safety. For the thousands of lives huddled in the shelters below. They were fighting for people they cared about. And that made all the difference. Varix made his decision. Very well. Human forces will lead the attack pattern. All collective ships will support as best we can. And if we die doing something gloriously illogical. For a Varith, that was practically poetry. The swarm erupted from the planet like a black tidal wave, millions of the small objects all moving in perfect coordination. It flowed toward the fleet ready to destroy everything. And the fleet did something the swarm had never encountered before. They scattered. Not in panic, but in purpose. Human ships went in directions that made no tactical sense. They abandoned strong positions to protect weak ones. They risked everything to cover each other. And the collective ships, for the first time, followed the human lead. Varix's warship broke formation to protect a damaged human transport. A Nexum cruiser powered down its shields to boost its engines, a choice no Nexum would normally make. The swarm faltered. Its predictions were all wrong. Nothing was happening as it should. The enemy was acting irrationally, unpredictably, impossibly. The battle raged through space. Ships were lost. Lives were sacrificed. But every time someone fell, someone else was there to help. Not because it was tactically optimal. Because they cared. Hana pushed her ship to the breaking point, her engines screaming with overload. The Nexum engineers should have stopped her. Instead, they helped. They had caught the human disease of impossible hope. Suji treated wounded in the medical bay as the ship shook around her. Patients who should have been enemies helped each other. Averith held down a human soldier while Suji set a broken bone. A Nexum donated its own energy to power a life support system for another species. It shouldn't have worked. By every logical analysis, the fleet should have been destroyed. But it didn't happen. Because humans had taught the collective something new, something powerful, something that logic alone could never achieve. They had taught them to care, and caring, it turned out, was the strongest weapon in the galaxy. The swarm was losing, and it didn't understand why. Its calculations were perfect. Its adaptations were flawless. It had defeated countless logical civilizations over thousands of years. But these beings, especially the humans, were doing things that made no sense. A human ship would break away from safety to rescue an alien vessel. Why? A Varith would risk its life for a being not of its genetic line. Impossible. A Nexum would choose friendship over calculation. Illogical. The swarm's intelligence, vast as it was, could not comprehend these actions. It tried to adapt, but how do you adapt to beings who don't follow their own nature? How do you predict decisions based on love instead of survival? On the command bridge, Ji-hoon watched the battle and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in humans, but in what humans had taught others. The collective ships were fighting differently now. Fighting with hope. fighting with heart.
We're pushing them back,
A Verith officer shouted, surprise clear in his voice. But then Hana's sensors screamed a warning. Energy spike! Massive energy spike under the planet! On the main display, they watched in horror as the planet itself began to crack. The swarm was drawing power from the planet's core. It was going to destroy everything. The fleet, the remaining survivors, the entire star system. If it couldn't win, it would take them all with it. All ships immediate evacuation, Varix ordered. We must leave now. What about the survivors still on the planet? Suji called from medical. We haven't gotten everyone out yet. They are lost. We must save who we can. Jihan looked at the numbers on his screen. 3,000 people still down there. 3,000 lives. The logical choice was clear. Save the tens of thousands already evacuated. Don't risk everyone for a few thousand. But humans had never been good at leaving people behind. I'm going down there, Taeyang said suddenly. That's suicide, Varix replied. You have maybe 10 minutes before the planet explodes. Then I better move fast. Taeyang looked at his Marines. I'm not ordering anyone to come. This is volunteer only. Every single human Marine stepped forward. Then something remarkable happened. Varath soldiers stepped forward. Next, some crew members stepped forward. Even members of species that had barely worked with humans before stepped forward. We go together, Minho said, the small Nexum child still holding on to him. All of us. Because that's what friends do. Friends. A word that most of these aliens had never truly understood before. But they were learning. Humans were teaching them. Varix looked at them all. These illogical, emotional, impossible beings who refused to give up. Who cared about people they had just met. Who would risk everything for strangers. I am a logical being, Varix said slowly. I should stop this foolishness. I should order you all to retreat. He paused. But I find I don't want to. Launch the rescue operations. All ships capable of landing, go. We get everyone out. Even if it makes no sense. The fleet descended. Human ships, alien ships, all of them racing against time. They had minutes, maybe less. The planet groaned and cracked beneath them, reality itself seeming to break apart. On the surface, Yuna was with the last group of survivors. She had been studying the ancient ruins and she had found something important. The civilization that had lived here before had been even more logical than the collective. They had created the swarm as a weapon, but the swarm had turned on them. They lost because they were perfect, Yuna whispered to herself. They were so logical, so predictable, that their own weapon defeated them. They couldn't adapt because adaptation requires chaos, requires emotion, requires caring about things beyond survival. She looked up as ships began landing, humans running toward her, toward the survivors. Behind them, aliens followed. All of them working together, all of them caring about each other. That's the answer, Yuna said. She activated her communicator. Hana, can you hear me? Barely, what is it? The swarm is a machine learning algorithm. It defeats logic with more logic. But we need to teach it something it's never learned, something illogical. What? Compassion. Hana understood immediately. While others loaded survivors onto ships, she dove into the ancient computer systems in the ruins. She had minutes at most. Her hands flew over alien keyboards, her mind racing. The Nexum engineers tried to help, but Hana's approach was too chaotic for them to follow. She wasn't calculating. She was feeling. She was trusting her instincts about what the ancient builders had intended. Got it! She shouted. She activated the ancient civilization's memory banks. Not the tactical data, not the weapon systems, the personal records, the stories, the history. She broadcast it all to the swarm. Stories of the people who had lived here, their hopes and dreams, their families, their love for each other, everything they had lost when the swarm destroyed them. The swarm received the data, processed it, tried to understand it. These were not tactics or threats. These were feelings, emotions, things the swarm had no framework for understanding. For the first time in its existence, the swarm hesitated not out of confusion, but out of something else, something new. The planet shook violently. Time was up. The last ships lifted off with the final survivors. Hana ran for her ship, Yuna right behind her. Behind them, the ground split open, revealing the white-hot core below. They made it aboard seconds before Taeyang pulled up. The fleet rocketed away from the dying planet. Behind them, the swarm gathered for one final attack, one last attempt to destroy these beings who had defeated it. But then it stopped. The swarm just stopped. On every ship, people watched in amazement as the dark clouds began to break apart. Not destroyed, choosing to disperse, choosing to end. What's happening? Varix asked. Una, exhausted but smiling, answered. It learned. It finally learned something beyond tactics and logic. It learned about loss, about the people it destroyed. And I think it felt something. Maybe regret, maybe sadness, maybe just the weight of all those lives. That's impossible, Anexum said. It's a machine intelligence. So were its creators in a way, Una replied. They had become so logical that they were practically machines themselves, and they created a weapon that reflected them. But we showed it something different. We showed it what it means to care. The swarm dissipated completely. The threat was over. The planet exploded behind them, but everyone was safe. Every survivor rescued, 0 lives lost in the final battle. It should have been impossible. By every calculation, many should have died. But humans had taught the collective to attempt the impossible. And together, they had succeeded. The fleet returned to the central hub as heroes. But more importantly, they returned as friends. Species that had never truly connected before now shared bonds forged in battle and sacrifice. Months passed. The galactic collective changed. Not overnight, but slowly, steadily. Humans were no longer seen as too emotional to be trusted. Their emotional nature was now seen as their greatest strength. Jihun was appointed to the High Council, the first human ever to serve. During his first speech, he said something that shocked everyone. We don't need to become more like you. You need to become more like us. Logic is valuable, but without compassion, logic is empty. Without caring for each other, what's the point of any of it? The collective agreed. New protocols were established, not just calculating optimal outcomes, but considering the emotional needs of individuals, not just genetic families, but chosen families. Friendships between species became common. Hana's engineering methods were adopted. Innovation through intuition became valued alongside calculation. The phrase, "it's impossible," became a challenge rather than a stopping point. Taeyang trained new military units. Mixed species squads where humans taught aliens to trust their instincts and aliens taught humans the value of strategy. The combination was powerful. Minho adopted the Nexum child officially. It was the first cross-species adoption in collective history. Others followed. Families became about choice and love, not just genetics. Suji's medical protocols revolutionized healthcare, treating patients as individuals with emotional needs, not just bodies to be repaired. Survival rates increased across the board. Yuna's research became required reading for all collective members. Understanding emotion, valuing connection, caring for others beyond logical benefit. On the rebuilt Terminus 7, now a symbol of cooperation and hope, they erected a monument. It showed a human and a Varith standing side by side, hands clasped together. The inscription was simple. Here we learned that the strongest power in the universe is not logic or weapons or technology. It is the choice to care. Humanity taught us that love, friendship, and compassion are not weaknesses. They are the hidden strength that makes any species truly great. Jihun stood before the monument with his friends. Human friends, alien friends, because that's what they all were now. Friends? Varix approached, his forearms spread in the Varath gesture of respect. You were right, Ambassador. About everything. We calculated millions of scenarios for first contact with your species. None of them predicted this. That's because you can't calculate caring, Jihun smiled. You can't predict love. You just have to feel it. We are learning, Varix replied. Slowly, but we are learning. Your species has given us something we lost millions of years ago. You gave us back our hearts. Looking out at the rebuilt colony at